Today we are in What is the Good News, Part 22. All right, for anybody that hasn't listened to the other 21 parts, well, you're kind of out of luck. No. Okay, those are covered, obviously, in the other 21 parts. But what's covered is this idea of the good news. I mean, it's something that Christianity talks about quite a bit, or at least they use those words. They don't really make it much, they don't make it clear what that good news is, except that they think the good news is really just telling you about the Messiah has been here, okay? And that is good news, and it is part of the good news. But it's just a piece of a very large thing called the good news, which we've been talking about for the last 20 parts, which is 20 weeks, which is several months, right? Okay, so it's going on almost 6 months now, right? 22 parts, so it's been a while. Now that being said though, all right, the good news, let's say what it is. It's the positive, see, I left this out the other day and Elder pointed out to me. It's the positive, forward-looking message from above. Okay, so Yeshua coming and everything, that is part of that forward-looking positive message to know, hey, when he already came and did things, what does that mean for us in terms of a positive forward-looking message? So we have all kinds of things that we have this thing called a hope, and it's because of him returning and all that means. So that's part of that message, right? So it's the forward-looking message from above delivered by an anointed appointed. We would call that out of the fivefold the prophet role, okay? In other words, speaking the word of Yah with authority, okay? So this is what we have. So when you look from Genesis all the way to Revelation, anytime you have a positive forward-looking message, now some of the good news that was given way back has already played out. So for them it was good news, and then it finally did play out. Some of it still has not finished playing out. Some of it was starting to play out in the Brit Chadashah, which is why Paul referred to this good news over and over again, because the good news of what people were looking forward to that had been told back in the past was now starting to play out. And so that's part of connecting the dots between when the message was first delivered and then reminding you, hey, this point here in the story fulfills some of that, but now leads us to the next phases of it, all right? So that's what I want to make sure that we're looking at. Now, up to this point, well, a couple weeks ago, we had covered things that were clearly stated from Genesis all the way up to the New Testament as good news, because good news is referenced in lots of places in the Old Testament as well. But then we started shifting to what does it look like for us today? In other words, what's the expectation that the above. And some of you guys are like, why do you keep referring that way? Because I want you guys to not get hung up on names and titles and everything else. We are in the below, he's in the above, or they, you want to call it the Father and the Son, all right? And there's lots of comparisons scripturally to the above and the below, or the earthly, which is the below, heavenly, the above, spiritual, the above, fleshly, the below. And so that message is being delivered to us in the below, on the earth, in the flesh, so that we understand the good news that we can, what one of the messages of the good news is? That you don't have to stay that way. That there's an opportunity to transform into that which is of the above. That's really good news, okay? Otherwise, we would just have this, and that would be it. And for most of us, this is not great a lot of the time. I'm not saying never, but a lot of the time, it's really not great. And so our bodies start to break down. If maybe they were broken down from the beginning. Some of us are born and we have issues, right? And then we have other issues relationally and other issues spiritually. We have all kinds of issues going on all the time. The good news is that those things do come to an end, and there's a future to look forward to. I think that's great news. It's part of how we, manage to get through our now, is knowing that there's more. Agreed? All right, now, so what we've been looking at is knowing this good news. Paul talks a lot about the good news and then also references what then is expected because of the good news. Now that you know there's good news and know about the good news, which again we talked about for a lot of parts, okay, what is then the expectation on us that the above has for us? Okay, what does the Father and Son expect from us? Okay, so he does talk about that a lot. And we're going to continue talking about that here as we look at the good news being talked about in Colossians. Okay, we're going to read just one chapter here, all right? It's chapter 1 is what we'll start with here. So let's begin in verse 1. So the good news is mentioned in several places, and I want us to hit some highlights of some of the other things that are said in between, because he does mention the good news in verse 5, and then mentions it again in verse 23, which is, there's a lot of verses in between. And so what is he discussing in between these sort of two framework verses about the good news? So he starts off, Shaul, an emissary of Yeshua Messiah, verse 1, by the desire of Elohim, Timothy our brother, to the set-apart ones in Colossae and the true brothers in Messiah. So we know context-wise, it's Paul talking to the people in Colossae and specifically to the true brothers in Messiah. So this is not a proselytizing letter to the general public, right? He says, favor to you and peace from Elohim our Father and the Master Yeshua Messiah. If you remember the teaching on, searching for the doctrine of grace, you know that the way he would have phrased this would have been in a very Hebraic or Jewish way, which is, may you merit his favor. Merited favor to you from Elohim our Father and the Master Yeshua. Okay? We give thanks to Elohim and Father of our Master Yeshua Messiah, praying always for you, having heard of your belief in Messiah Yeshua and of your love for all the set-apart ones. So their belief was known, at least in the network of believers, that Paul had heard about this, okay? And was also known, and this is an area we struggle with, is their love for each other. And we have a lot of indifference, tolerance, whatever negative other things towards each other. Go back to 1 Corinthians 13, your good old love chapter. Okay, and know that, he talks about how love forgives all, covers all, okay? See, but a lot of you guys don't have that kind of love because it doesn't function that way in you. It doesn't cover anything, doesn't forgive anything, okay? Is impatient. I mean, we could take Colossians, reverse it. 1 Corinthians and reverse it, and that's probably what a lot of you are doing, okay? I mean, that's just not what he intended, in the instruction there. Let's just read that for a second. So in 1 Corinthians 13, it says, verse 4, love is impatient, love is rude, love envies, love puffs up. I mean, that's the way we act. It's the opposite of what it says, right? So do you actually have that love? Because that love is something that Paul heard about. Like Paul saying, hey, I know that you have a reputation for loving each other, okay? Now, not just words, oh, I love everybody, oh, I love you. I got husbands and wives say, I love you, and then they treat each other like whatever, okay? I'm just saying. Words, not as loud as action. Action speaks louder, right? Your action speaks so loudly, I can't hear what you're saying type of thing. Okay, if you've never heard that phrase, that's a good one for you, okay? But it says, love is patient. What does patient actually look like? By the way, isn't that one of the fruit of the Spirit? One of the aspects of the fruit of the Spirit? Patience. So what does that look like? Well, I don't like the way things are going right now, and it's not going the way I want, fast enough, whatever. So be patient. Let it play out. But we don't want to let it play out. We like to jump to conclusions, which it also says not to do. By the way, let's go to that verse that says, judge not lest you be judged. Stick in there. Don't jump to conclusions if you don't want anybody to jump to conclusions on you. Anybody ever had anybody jump to a conclusion that was wrong on you? Did you like it? So why do you do it to other people? But you do, okay? And why are you doing that? Because you're not patient. See, people get mad at me because I allow a lot of things to play out. You think I'm just allowing it. I allow things to play out. I give people enough rope to hang themselves, so to speak. I let it play out to see how it really plays. I ask Elder, he'll tell you, okay? Because a lot of things you think that I'm ignoring, he'll tell you I'm fully aware of them. But I'm letting it play out for whatever reason, okay? We had a gentleman that was with the congregation or with this ministry for a very small window of time that we had, even some of the leaders were like really mad at me for letting him be a part of the ministry or letting him be, participate, knowing full well this guy had an issue and an agenda and whatever he was trying to do. And you know what? I used him like the Father uses Hasatan. In other words, he was there to expose those that needed to be exposed that he could take with him. All right? Some of the nonsense that you guys think is such nonsense that I seem to allow here, it's being allowed partially so that those of you that need to go, go. Because you don't have the love. You don't have the patience. That's just the first aspect of the love. We didn't even keep going, okay? It's kind. It doesn't envy. Doesn't boast. Doesn't puff up. Doesn't behave indecently. Doesn't seek its own. By the way, let's kind of take the one in verse 5, doesn't behave indecently, and switch that and incorporate it into the two previous things. Don't get all puffed up and boastful about what you think is indecent. Because you might say, see, you got to that part, Rabbi, you allow this and you allow that. Oh, really? Where are you getting all boastful and posting and puffed up about you? All right? I'm going to ask you a really hard question. Well, it's an easy question, but it's hard to truthfully answer. Are you really that perfect to judge anybody? Are you really that perfect to get all upset with whatever you think I'm allowing when your life is as messed up as it is, but you do it so well in private that you hide it or whatever you're doing? Okay, seriously? Are you not like everybody else? Have you not fallen short? Do you not on a regular basis still fall short? So what are you judging? Verses tell you, who are you to judge as another? What qualifies you to do that? Because I got a lot of people saying they're all upset because they heard that so-and-so is behaving as they believe indecently. And I might even agree. Elder will tell you I might even agree, but that doesn't mean that I'm not going to allow certain things to play out because everybody needs to grow from it in some way. But you don't like that. And the reason you don't like that is because you still are doing something. Now again, we're going to focus probably forever from now on your growth. I'm not going to focus on the mechanics. You got them, they're there, you know them, I don't need to focus on them. I'm not saying you don't need to focus on them and do them. I'm saying they don't need to be rammed back into your head every other day. But what about your personal growth? You know, I talked about this last night in the Torah portion. Some of you spend way too much time in your emotions, in your feelings. That's what this is talking about. Love does not get caught up in their feelings. Well, you know, this person, that's where you're sort of boasting and puffed up about yourself, because now you're holding yourself up as an authority and you're better than them and how dare you, whatever, okay? You don't get to judge somebody's parenting style because it's different than yours. A lot of you do that. You watch people and their children, you go, oh, well, that person is awful, that parent, because look at what they let their kid do. Well, they're not you. Those kids are not yours. But do you understand? I'm sort of preach at you now a little bit. Do you understand, this is important, that not everything has to be through your filter? Because some of you, as generous as you may outwardly be and caring about others, are really selfish people. And by selfish, I mean you need, not want. Want's fine, but you have a want needs, you've heard me talk about the wants needs disconnect, where you treat a want like a need. You need everybody to behave the way you think they should. So when you watch somebody parent and they don't parent the way you think they should, you have an issue. Or you watch somebody do this or that and not the way you would do it, you have an issue. You see a husband, wife, whatever, you have an issue. Or you're married and your spouse doesn't act the way you think that spouse should act, you have an issue. You might want to get objective counsel to make sure that you're actually seeing it correctly. Because if you're in your emotions, you're not probably seeing it correctly. Because the emotions are a very reality skewing filter. Let's call it that, right? Your emotions can be a very strong, powerful reality skewing. In other words, taking reality and it now no longer looks exactly like it should. It still looks like reality to you, but it is skewed. It's off. It's not correct. I'm saying all of this because Paul started off with the Colossians saying, your true brothers favor to you. He says, I give thanks to you because I have heard of your belief and your love for all, not some, all the set apart ones. Do you guys love everybody in this room? Oh, I love everybody. Really, do you? Are there still people in this room you don't talk to? Still people in this room you avoid? Still some people that you look down at and judge that well, I can't believe they do that or this or that, whatever it is. Well, maybe they can't believe the things you do. But just maybe you have a little bit of wisdom that you don't do it in public. And then but here's the worst part, you got everybody fooled, but you're living a lie. You present yourself one way, but you know what? You're like the whitened sepulchres. You're like, oh, you look all good on the outside, Yeshua said in Matthew 23, but in the inside, you're dead man's bones. You're dirty. There's stuff that's a problem. But you're busy judging another. Maybe the plank and the twig parable might help for that, okay? Because I'll make decisions, or I'll let something happen, or somebody else will do something that has nothing to do with leadership at all, and you'll just be judging it and having an issue with it because you're running it through your filter. Why are you here? I mean here like in a group observance. Okay, just because you prefer to hear this live than on a screen? Is that why? I mean, I'm trying to understand. Are you here to understand that the Father's, here's the good news. Good news, the forward-looking thing is that his plan is for a forever community that loves each other. Remember, second great command is to love each other. So you guys are all wanting to focus on the first command to love him. All right, no problem. That's only half the message. Yeshua said there's two great commands. And you're okay thinking, well, I love the ones that I love, but you gotta love everybody. Okay? And that's really tough for us. Okay? You know why this congregation has the flow that it does? People come, people leave. People come, people leave. It's because there's a love problem. Okay? Some of that problem is with you guys here not loving those that are here that leave because they didn't feel loved. And some of it is them and how they were judging it through their filters about love. And they weren't patient. Let's continue what it says here in 1 Corinthians, right? It says, it doesn't seek its own. Oh, I just covered that, didn't I? In other words, it doesn't mean that it has to be my way. Love doesn't insist on things being my way. Can we understand it that way? Am I misreading the verse? Doesn't seek its own. And also you could say it doesn't seek only those that are like you. So you're not only gonna hang out with people just like you. By the way, if you did, they would irritate you. They would, because you still need that variety and you are attracted to variety, okay? So yes, it's good to hang out with people like you, but you're gonna need more than just that. But I believe it's saying love doesn't seek its own, meaning it doesn't have to be my way. See, you don't realize every time you do that you're making everything or whatever that thing is about you. Oh, I don't, I was doing it for them. Only if they wanted you to do it for them. When you go to have to correct and say and judge and whatever, well, they're parenting wrong, according to you. And you know what? You have to receive this. It doesn't matter if you're right. You're still going about it wrong. In other words, even if you are technically correct on whatever real terms you can measure to say you're actually accurately correct, you can still be wrong by the way you go about it. Because you got to do it this way, according to love. All right? It says that it doesn't rejoice over unrighteousness. What would that look like? So it could look like that you're rejoicing over somebody doing anything unrighteous. What about this in terms of taking joy and spreading it? Well, did you know what so-and-so did? How many of you, when you get a juicy nugget like that, are quick to go spread that to somebody? Oh, I just told one person who didn't tell one person who told one person, whatever, okay? Because you'll hear something, you're like, oh, and then you need to tell somebody. Why? Where's your, patience, kindness? That's not being kind to your brother who's having an issue. Because obviously your brother's having an issue. If you're right, then your brother's having an issue. Okay? And we have people in this congregation. If you have a big enough congregation, or it's not the biggest congregation in the world, but Messianic-wise, it's a fairly large congregation. You have enough people in a congregation, pretty much any issue you can think of is in the congregation, okay? You've got people in every big enough congregation who have issues with anger, lust of the flesh, alcohol, drugs, whatever you want to put, gambling, pick anything, depression, bipolar, whatever. You've got it in there somewhere, okay? Anxiety, pride, ego, whatever, okay? You pick any negative attribute that you could have, any negative behavior. You get a big enough group, it's all in there. Don't you know that? So why you get upset when you notice and discover one of them or some of them? Well, these people over here, they're doing this thing that I think is wrong. Keywords, I think is wrong. Okay? Well, they're doing this on Shabbat. Okay, that verse doesn't exist as to what the things you guys get all upset about, I can't find in here. Is it really Shabbat worthy? Probably not. Is it a major issue for you to be yakking your mouth about and running your jaw about? No. But I don't like it. Good. Deal with that. Look, I want you to successfully transform. That's all I care about. I know I piss a lot of you off because of that. Because I put a mirror in your face. You like it fine when I'm describing somebody else. You go, Rabbi, you tell them until then I'm talking about you. Or you don't like it then. But I need you to deal with you. Look, years ago in one of the teachings, and for a couple of teachings in a row, I kept bringing up this idea of, a person would be upset and be like, well, how come you let this happen? Or why did you? And then I look at their face and say, whatever that is, that's why. So that you could have that come out and be dealt with, okay? Well, how come you don't do anything about this? And why do you let this? That's why. Because that needed to be exposed so you could deal with it. Oh, you don't like that idea. You see, we're too locked into a very westernized, Christianized idea that outside intervention is the answer to everything. Can you understand that? You know what the good news is? Is that you could do most of this yourself. That's the good news. That he has empowered you with and given you tools to handle most of this yourself. When I say most of this, I mean the stuff that we do in the below, okay? You have not only the abilities, but you also have access to the guidance to use those abilities properly to be successful in all your interpersonal and other things you do in the below, whether it's career, relationships, or anything, health, all of the stuff is available. You still have this addiction to the concept. You're addicted to an idea that the solution's gonna come from outside. Okay? This may hurt to hear, but nobody's coming to rescue you. Okay? Nobody's coming to rescue you. You're provided with divine appointments, guidance, opportunities to grow and deal with things, but nobody's gonna come and rescue you from what you need to grow and learn and develop from. That's not happening. That's good news, by the way, because of what value would be. This is like, I said this many, many years ago. People would say, well, why don't you make people do this or make people do that? Because it goes against the whole point. What good would it be if you were standing there or sitting, whatever it is, on Judgment Day before the Creator, okay, and I'm not even sure it literally plays out that way, but there's a metaphor he wants us to understand, okay? And he says, as he's reviewing your life, well, I noticed that you did whatever this thing was that you wanted me to make people do. And you're like, yeah, I did that. And he's gonna be like, yeah, but I also know that you didn't want to, that you only did it because somebody made you do it. So is there any value then in you doing it? Okay? Like some of you, when you get your teenagers and you try forcing them to come to services that they don't want to come to. Leave them alone. See, all your Christianese inside just flipped out. What good is making them come to services doing? Is it doing any good, really? No, it's making you feel better. Is it making them more vertically minded? As a matter of fact, they might be going the opposite. They're getting more mad because you're forcing them, okay? So if I forced people, which I don't, which part of you get mad at, so it's so funny, I get accused of doing things that I really don't do, and other people get mad because I don't actually do those things that people are accusing that I'm not doing. They want me to control things, especially when it has nothing to do with them. You need to make people stop doing this, or people need to stop doing that. No, you need to leave it alone. Well, what they're doing is wrong. Fine, then you don't do it. Is that so hard? Because if you want to be only in a group of people that's not doing anything wrong, go sit by yourself somewhere. And by the way, you're still doing things wrong, okay? But at least you're not with others doing anything wrong. Do you understand? Can we be rational for 5 minutes, okay, and be logical for a few seconds here? Years ago, I was looking for a congregational place to plant my hat, so to speak, and I was guest speaking at a congregation. I've told this story many times, and maybe it's been a while. And at the end of the teaching, did a little Q&A as I always do, and this one lady stayed to the very, very end. And so she was looking for an opportunity to have more of a one-on-one to ask me some questions. So I said, fine, let's talk, whatever you want. And then I noticed very quickly, she was trying to ask me about, well, where do you stand on this doctrine? Where do you stand on this position? Where do you stand? Where do you stand? Where do you stand? And I stopped her. I know you find that shocking. I interrupted her and stopped her in the middle of what she was doing. And I said, excuse me, let me just say something. I said, look, it seems to me you're trying to find out and figure out if I line up with you, okay? And I said, look, if that's your criteria because I asked her why she was asking all the questions first. She said, because I'm trying to figure out whether or not I want to come here if you're going to be the rabbi. So I want to figure out where you stand. I said, well, if that's your criteria, you know what, I tell you, that leads one place. And I said, please don't get offended. Of course, she ended up being offended. I said, please don't be offended, but that ends up alone in your living room. Because you're not going to find anybody standing in front of a microphone that agrees with you. Not because your thoughts are so weird, but because you're you. And the person at the microphone is them, and you're not going to automatically right away agree with everything they say. And so I said, if you're measuring your beliefs and my belief to see if they line up to come here, then your measuring stick is wrong, okay? Now, you might want to measure and say, I believe this person's anointed and appointed, so I want to see where I stand compared to them so I can figure out things I might need to work on. But that's because you're seeing the person in that role. I said, you need to figure out whether or not I'm Ephesians 4:11 or not. That's what you should be looking for. Because see, if your doctrines are so perfect, you wouldn't need a teacher anyway. If you understood scripture so perfectly, why would you need a teacher? If you understood all these things so well, you wouldn't have any questions. Anybody in this room not have questions? Not a single hand. I have questions, okay? And so where are we looking at these things? Okay, do we love one another? It says here, doesn't rejoice in unrighteousness, but rejoices in the truth. What's the truth? Your brother's messed up and so are you. Still your brother though, okay? It says it covers all, believes all. Okay, first of all, okay, covers all meaning what? In other words, it puts a covering over, in other words, makes it like, this is okay, we can deal with it. This is something I can be patient with. It provides a covering for it, all right? It says, believes all. Your brother comes to you and tells you something, you don't believe him. Your brother or sister says they're sorry, you don't believe them. Well, if you love them, you believe them. But you don't want to believe them because you've already decided and judged for yourself that they're this, that, or the other thing, so it doesn't matter what they say. Because whatever they say, unless it matches up with the belief you already have in your head, you have a reality view, and what they just said, if it doesn't match, it can't be received. Because you've already made a decision. You've already concluded that they're this or they're that or whatever you judged them to be, right? It expects all. What are you expecting? All the things, as Yahweh said, they would play out. So you're expecting your brother to be messed up and to grow. Your brother's expecting you to be messed up and to grow. Grow not just into anything, but into Messiah-like behavior, character. Isn't that what it says? So you should be expecting that. But you should also be expecting that it might be rough along the way. Why does it mess you up so much when reality, not just any reality, but something you should be expecting, plays out? Do you not expect in a group of people over time somebody's going to step on your toes? Somebody's going to rub you the wrong way? Somebody's going to like forgot to shake your hand? I had a person that was sort of, him and his wife were friends more with my wife than with me because she knew that they were Romanian, right? So I didn't know Romanian as much, but she knew them that way. And I went around the room, as I almost always did back in those days, shaking everybody's hand and saying, Shabbat Shalom. Small group of people. Somehow I missed him one week and they quit on the congregation because I didn't shake his hand. I was like, you kidding me? You should expect that those kind of things would happen. But then, of course, believes all. Well, then when I came to him and said, look, I just missed you. Oh no, in his head already he was convinced I snubbed him in some way. And I couldn't win that argument. How many people can't win an argument with you because you already made a decision in your head? You've already concluded in your head, and now there's nothing they say that actually is going to matter. You ever have that problem? Okay? Maybe you don't feel like you've ever had that problem. You ever have it the other way around where no matter what you said, the person just would never receive it because they'd already made up their mind? You've had that problem. But you know what? You've had it the other way too. There are times when people came to you, but you just would not receive. Why? Because you had already convinced yourself of A, and they were coming with B, and there's no way B could be true because I've already decided A is true. Isn't that you sometimes? That's not love. That's not love. Okay? He says, love never fails. Look, if you love somebody, nothing should change the fact that down the road, no matter what happens, I still love you. I may not like you enough to interact with you. I may have issues. We may have things that are just too problematic to keep going in a walk together, but I should still love you if I loved you at all. Okay? Okay, a perfect example would be the default relationships. You have a child or a parent that's problematic to your life. You should still love them, even though you might not be able to spend time with them, even though you may be in such a level of disagreement that you can't really function with them, but you should still love them. Okay? What would love? Love is believing that whatever's wrong with them can get fixed someday, that Abba's got them in their hand. I don't care how bad they are, you should still be hoping and loving that whatever caused them to be that bad will get addressed someday. Even though I need to do that from a distance. Okay? Even people that abused you. You should be, love would dictate that you would pray and hope because they probably were abused too. Okay, but you don't want to hear that and be all compassionate about their abuse because they abuse you. I get that because all you're more real to you is your trauma. Okay? Look, I did not do well with my father in a lot of ways. He wasn't terrible, but we had our problems. But when I came to find out that his father treated him the same way, it gave me a different perspective. Okay? And he unfortunately didn't have the maturity to not imitate the behavior done to him. And then I chose to be the one to break that cycle and not treat my children the way he treated me. Okay, but I had to make a conscious decision to do that. I could have easily fell into the other direction, I'm sure. Except I made that decision so early on in life that I never was tempted to act like him. Okay? Although I'm sure I did from time to time just by natural default. All right? Go back to Colossians. I told you this will be more than one more part. I was supposed to get through Colossians. We only got through 2 verses, or 4 verses, okay? So a lot of you will be excited about people hearing about your belief. Oh, people need to know I keep the Sabbath. People need to know I do this and I don't do that and I whatever. All right, good. But do they see you as someone who has love for all the set apart ones? Is judging loving? No, okay? Now, we do have an exception, and it's worded very interestingly. It talks about when the righteous judge comes, he will not judge through his emotions. So unless you're him, you're likely to fail at that, okay? Because we have a righteous judge that's going to judge according to what actually is the deal. who knows why you struggled, knows why you were treated the way you were by whoever caused you to have your traumas and your problems, knows the whole story. The only judge you'll ever sit in front of that actually knows the whole story. But yet you're judging people and you don't have any of the story, barely. I mean, you have a little piece of it and you think you have all of it, but you don't. You just don't. You know, somebody runs into you at the wrong moment, they're going through a real whatever hard time, and they bite your head off for whatever reason, and you didn't deserve it, and you get all upset, and you have no idea where they're coming from. That doesn't excuse their behavior, but what about figuring out, oh my gosh, maybe they're just having a bad day. Maybe they had a string of bad things just happen in a row, and they're just not in their right head. Did you ever make that mistake and bite someone's head off, so to speak, and blast somebody because you were not in the right head? That you never would have treated them that way and you felt ashamed later and said, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, but you were just in a bad place. And then they said just the wrong thing at the wrong moment and you blew up. Everybody has that. But are you going to be patient and kind? What does kind mean in those situations? To realize there may be a reason for their behavior that has nothing to do with me, but you're too busy taking it personally. Well, if you know the person, you know that they love you. They know that you've been friends with them for however long or whatever it is. So you should also know that that behavior is not the normal behavior from them. So your first thought should be, oh my gosh, they must be really going through something. I might need to back off a little bit, give them some space and not just get all offended and upset because they snapped my head off with whatever okay? All right, so he says, having heard of your belief in Messiah Yeshua and your love for all the set-apart ones, because of the expectation that is laid up for you in the heavens, of which you've heard before in the word of truth of the good news. So you're supposed to do those two things, to have belief in Messiah and love one another because of the expectation laid out for you in the good news. So the good news is all about that forward-looking, positive message that you're looking forward to experiencing, and now the expectation is that you do these things because you expect that that's what's necessary to get to the other part. You see how he connected it? So all of you have this expectation of the good news. Please stop resting on the fact that you don't eat pork, or you keep a few feasts, you don't work on Saturday. Well, good for you. Anybody could do that. You want to be well done, good and trustworthy servant? How about finding a way to love your challenging person that's hard to love? How about finding a way to do the things that we were just talking about for the last 30 minutes, okay? Can you do that? Actually, 40 minutes. We have 30 minutes left of the 70, okay? Can we do that? Because some of you are just strutting around thinking, I wear my seat, I go show up at Saturday, and well, good, you need to do those things. Okay, but you know what? Yeshua says, if you just do what's expected on that mechanical, simple level, you're a useless servant. So I'm gonna tell you, when we get to Hebrews, I don't think we're gonna get to it in this chapter. We're gonna go to Hebrews next, probably. When we get there, you're gonna see that there's a big part of understanding that it's belief, which is not just the mechanics. Don't you know that the mechanics are still done by a lot of those people in the desert that got laid low? Okay, because if they didn't do the mechanics, the law said they would have been stoned or cast out of the camp, right? So they were doing mechanics, but they weren't doing it with the other half of it. How they treated each other, how they loved each other, how they believed in what it was transformatively trying to get them to. Okay? And so let's understand that that's a big part that most of us are not focusing enough attention on. Okay? Some of you are like, why do you always talk about personal development? Because that's everything we're supposed to be doing in this life, is personally developing into Him. I don't know how else to put it. Your whole life is about personal development. I don't want to hear any argument with that. I don't know any other way to describe the expectation that you are to transform into Him. How do you do that? By personally developing His characteristics. So if you don't understand your personality and your whatever psycho-emotional issues are and all these other things that handicap you in your transformation, how are you going to transform? You know, I talk a lot about observing, learning, and adjusting, right? Are you paying attention to you? Are you noticing when you do something and it doesn't seem to work well with people? And then you start to maybe think, why? But when you do other things, it works really well with people. Are you paying any attention so you can learn about you or recognize that you may have an issue? Or maybe you have a close friend or maybe a spouse or whoever, or a child or somebody that you're close with that says to you, you know, can I be honest with you, Mom? Can I be honest with you, Dad? Or if it's just your friend, hey, Bob, Sue, whoever, hey, can I be honest with you? You may not realize this, but you kind of come on a little harsh, you're a little overly critical, you're judging or whatever. Whatever it is, your temper's out of control or whatever, do you get defensive or are you going to say, you know what, I need to consider that. I need to consider that that may be true, depending on the source it's coming from, especially if it's a source that loves you, that you know loves you. But some people won't tell you anything because they know you're just going to snap their head off. Because some of you, one of the first things you're going to need to work on is not go by default into defense mode. A lot of spouses fight and they come to me, it's because as soon as whatever issue came up, one person brought it up, the other person went right into defense mode. And then they said something back, put the other person in defense mode. Now everybody's smacking each other, attacking and defending. That's not going to work. Okay, you got to own it. But you can't own it if you can't receive it. Okay? It's like the person who looked in the mirror, right? And then walked away forgetting what they were looking at. Okay? Come on, if you're a parent and your child walks somewhere and you see them in the house with like mud or something on their head, and you had already sent them to the bathroom to wash up, and they come back out and you say to them, did you even look in the mirror? Like you couldn't have missed this big smudge on your head. Okay? Because they didn't. They just walked in, did the minimum, whatever, they hurried up so they wanted to go do whatever they wanted to do, and they didn't look or care about whatever was there. Do you care? Do you actually care? Look, we're going to deal with where the rubber meets the road, and if nobody wants to hear it, then they can all leave, that's fine. I'll just talk to the camera, okay? Because some people are like, well, why can't you just give us encouragement? This is encouraging. The good news is you can do this. He has an expectation of you doing something. Why would he have the expectation if you couldn't do it? And stop looking for him to do it for you. Okay? I may be the only one out there screaming that he will do nothing that you need to do yourself. Okay? No preacher's talking that because nobody wants to hear that. They all want to hear, well, just pray and God will take it away and he'll do it for you. That's all nonsense. That is not the way it works, okay? You want to hear that, go to another place. I'm never going to tell you that. He'll do what you can't do. He will never do what you won't do. Do you understand? See, but I know you don't like that because you don't want to do it, so you want him to do it. And then you want us to pray for things to be intervened on in some way, and you'll come to me and ask me, and people get mad at me because I say no. Well, I want you to pray about this. No, it doesn't need prayer. It needs you to take action. I'll pray that you get some strength and get a spine. Okay? You guys are rolled up in a fetal position. It's like grow a spine. Okay? And recognize it's your growth. You need to do this. He put this in front of you for you. All right? Ask my children when they were having a problem with schoolwork, and I knew it wasn't something just that they didn't understand, and they might come to me, I said, hey, I already graduated 5th grade. I already graduated 7th grade. It's your problem now. Figure it out. Because part of school is you learning how to figure out, not just have somebody spoon feed you. Okay? Because once you graduate and it's all done, nobody's going to spoon feed you. You got to figure it out. Now, if you have a specific question, sure, I answered my kids' questions when they did. Sometimes you just, it was hard and it was struggling. So figure it out. You know how to do this. You're just going to have to grind it out. Okay? This life is school. This whole life is you're in school. Okay? To learn. Not like public school where maybe you don't learn. This is life. And you know what? Actually, you treat this like public school because you walk through it and don't learn. And so we end up with a bunch of people graduating from high school. They can't read, they can't do math, because they went through school though. And some of you guys are 40, 50 years old and learn nothing. I don't mean nothing, but there are areas where that you basically learn nothing. And then you call us up and I'm like, I literally have asked people, how did you get to be 55 years old and how did you even get there? And then they get mad at me like I'm being condescending or insulting. No, I'm really just confused. Because they didn't learn the lessons. They kept finding handouts and codependent people or whatever, instead of dealing with their stuff and growing. You have an expectation. The good news is there, but I'm telling you the bad news too. The bad news is, and we're going to read that probably in Hebrews, is that if you do not obey, part of the obeying is loving one another. That is part of the obeying. If you don't obey and treat each other like he treats us with love, kindness, compassion, all of the fruit of the Spirit, love, joy, peace, patience, etc., you're not going to graduate into the reward that's promised through the good news. Okay? And we are really struggling still. And no different, you go back to Paul talking to his group right here. They struggled too. Oh yeah, he's starting off all complimentary here in the beginning, but then later on he's going to deal with where they are not there yet. Okay? They still have issues. So he says here, because of the expectation is laid up for you in the heavens, of which you heard before in the word of the truth of the good news. Do you understand that the good news is truth? It is true that if you do these things, you will receive these things. It is also true that no matter what you do, certain things are going to play out, whether you get to participate in them or not. But they will play out. That's the truth. Okay, the good news which has come to you, as also in all the world, it is bearing fruit and growing, as also among you, since the day you heard and knew the favor of Elohim in truth. Listen to how this is played out here. We have heard the expectation laid up. It has come to us through an anointed, appointed. See in verse 7, he says, as you also learned from Epaphras, our beloved fellow servant, who is a true servant of Messiah. That's an anointed, appointed, right? So this good news has come to us through an anointed, appointed, since the day we heard and knew or had a relationship with the favor of Elohim in truth. That's when he popped your bubble and said, hi, let me introduce myself. I created you. Come have a relationship with me, right? Verse 8, he says, who also declared to us your love in the Spirit. Okay, reset time. What's this love in the Spirit? Okay, he declared to us the love as it was expressed in the fullness of how it was intended by the above. That's the challenge that we've been talking about here for the last almost hour, okay? Can you express, as he's saying here, this love as intended? That's the spirit of the law. The spirit of something is the fullness of how it was intended to be expressed or played out or applied. When looking at law in terms of like civil law, they want to see what was the intent of how this law be applied into what situations and what things, right? That's the spirit of it. So he's saying here, who also declared to us your love, this Epaphras declared your love, that you were doing these things in the fullness as it was intended, in the Spirit. Okay? Not in some out-of-body something. I don't know. Otherwise, what is it talking about? How are you expressing? He declared to us your love in the Spirit. So was he doing it like out of body, going to communicate? And so he's communicating this love? Or was it the love you were doing? What is it talking about? I think it's saying that he was communicating to Paul, hey, these people are making an effort to do this as intended. Does that make sense? Okay? Now, and again, if this stuff is the first time you've heard anything like this, and this is kind of new and different to you, well, that may mean something in terms of the message that you get from me than maybe what you get from some other people. How these things are pieced together, how it's explained, how it makes sense now. And that's, again, I'm not trying to toot my horn or pat myself on the back. I'm trying to get your attention that maybe this is different. Because some of you recognize that and then you forget and you don't recognize it. And there are people out there saying I'm the greatest thing since sliced bread until I'm not, because they stepped on their toes. Now, I didn't do anything different. I didn't change. I didn't teach differently. Some of you have gone back and listened to some old teaching and say, wow, he says the same thing back then too. All right? Verse 9. It goes, that is why we, from the day we heard, have not ceased praying for you and asking that you be filled with the knowledge of his desire in all wisdom and spiritual understanding. So part of walking out this good news, part of the expectation is that you would be filled with the knowledge of his desire in all wisdom and spiritual understanding. So what is he saying? Okay, so you would understand or have a relationship with his desire in two ways. One, he says that you would have this desire in all wisdom. What is wisdom? Wisdom is how to apply knowledge properly, right? It's the application. So he said that you would have a relationship with this, with him, this knowledge of him, apply it with wisdom, and as fully intended in the spirit of it, with understanding of the spirit of it. That's the expectation for you guys. The good news that was shared with you expects you to do this. Be filled with the understanding, relationship, and knowledge of what his desire is. Why did he give you good news? Why is that good news, or I should say, what are the elements that play out so that you could be a part of that expectation? Well, you need to figure out what his desire is for you, which, by the way, he explains, cover to cover. It's there. It's not something you have to just sit around going, I don't know what he wants. Okay, a lot of you call us up going, I don't know what he wants with me. The good news explains all that. From cover to cover, Genesis and Revelation's explained. But you need a teacher maybe to explain it. I've explained it in it's like, 700 teachings we got at least on the website, okay? Whatever 50-something times 12 is, okay? So we got lots of teachings. He says, with that, being empowered with all power. So what empowers you? Okay, I'm sorry, I skipped a verse. Okay, so you have wisdom and spiritual understanding to do what? Look at the next verse. Your knowledge of him and his desire, and using the wisdom and the spiritual fullness of understanding of his intent was to do what? To walk worthily. So for all of you, works is not salvation, works, whatever. Well, then what does this mean then? How do you walk worthily if there's nothing that we're not worthy? Because people will say, oh, my works and this and that, and I'm never going to be worthy, so Yeshua has to do it all for me. Well, Paul doesn't seem to think that. Paul says that all of this is here so that you, if you have what? The knowledge of his desire in all wisdom and spiritual understanding, that then you should know how to walk worthily of the master. Okay? It says, pleasing all. Remember I said last night I was going to give you a better definition for a Greek word? This is the one I'm going to give you. He says, pleasing all, bearing fruit in every good work, and increasing in the knowledge of Elohim. So the Greek here is better translated, and look at the context of it, as willing service or compliance. So let's change that back. To walk worthily of the master, walking in fullness of compliance or willing service, bearing fruit. Doesn't that make more sense? What does pleasing all mean? But if you look at the Greek, one of the options there is willing service or compliance. So it's saying, look, walking worthily of the master in willing compliance, in willing service. That makes total sense. Fits totally into the context, okay? Then you would bear fruit in every good work and increase in the knowledge, the relationship, right, the knowing of Elohim. Oh, okay. Being empowered with all power according to the might of his esteem for all endurance and patience with joy. So doing these things in this order, in this way, will empower you. And in empowering you, you should have endurance, patience, and joy. Or not only just patience, patience with joy. See, a lot of you struggle because when you're dealing with things that require patience, you have no joy. Because the struggle to be patient when you know it's hard to do steals your joy. Okay? I experience this all the time. All right? So I know what it's like. When I need to, I got to be patient. I'm not in any kind of joy at that moment. But he wants you to have patience with joy. And the reason he wants you to have patience with joy, okay, let me read something else for you. Give me a second. See if I can find it quickly enough. All right, it's because James chapter 1 and verse 2 says, my brothers, count it joy when you're in a trial. Isn't a challenge to your patience a trial? Knowing that the proving of your belief works endurance. So it's a test of your belief. So you got to count it joy. So when you're in a situation, he wants you to have patience with joy, knowing you're being tested. And the joy knowing you're passing the test. All right? Okay. And again, this is showing you what the Ruach does. I just want to demonstrate for you. I don't have these verses that I keep jumping to in my notes, but the Ruach is bringing to remembrance verses that I've put in, okay? So that my brain and the Ruach is saying to me, oh, there's joy and challenge. Oh, let's go to James 1. Oh, this love thing, let's go to 1 Corinthians 13. Because sometimes you guys don't understand what the Ruach does. Well, that's one of the things the Ruach does. It stirs and brings to remembrance. Verses literally say that, okay? But it can't bring to remembrance something you don't have in you. Some of you have gone through some challenges and said, Rabbi, what your teaching said came to my head. Good, because you put it in there. It was able to come to your head. But what brought it to your head was the Ruach. That's what the Ruach does, okay? Verse 12, giving thanks to the Father who has made us fit to share in the inheritance of the set-apart ones in the light. Now, some of you will read that verse and forget everything that led up to that verse. Well, he made us fit. No, he gave us everything to become fit. Okay, instead, most of you are throwing the fit. Okay, or having a fit. See, because a Christian pastor will read that verse and tell you, see, the Father who has made us fit to share in the inheritance. He made you fit to share in the inheritance. You can ignore all the other stuff that he said first. That stuff's, let's just jump down to verse 12. Isn't that what they would do? All right? Because then they'll read verse 13. Who has delivered us from the authority of darkness and transferred us into the reign of the Son of his love. Okay, yes. He has done that by opening your awareness to that option. But you still have to choose the option. It's like with Moshe saying, I lay before you life and death, choose life. You got two choices, all right? So yes, he has delivered us from the authority of darkness, meaning there is a delivery that we can choose to take. Look, did they all have to leave Egypt? No. Moses told them to gather their stuff and let's go, and he led and the people left. Did they have to leave? They could have chosen to stay there. Nobody forced them to leave, okay? But deliverance was made available. That's what he's talking about here. He has given you the path to be delivered out of darkness if you would choose to. But he's also got other parts of other letters where he talks about you being once darkness and now light if you make the choice. Listen to the teaching on darkness and light, which talks about the journey between the two, okay? So he delivered us and transferred us into the reign of the Son of his love. So, see, there you go. We're transferred into the reign. We're in the kingdom now. No, if you do the expectation. Don't skip the rest of the chapter that came before this verse, okay? If you did all of these things, then yes, you've been delivered out of the authority of darkness, and now you're transferred into the kingdom. Until then, it's available, waiting for you to make the choice, take the action. But it's available. You understand the difference? You see that, okay? The Son of his love, then goes verse 14, in whom we have redemption through his blood for the forgiveness of sins, who is the likeness of the invisible Elohim, the firstborn of all creation, because in him, so now he's making a case for how Yeshua plays into this, all right? Because in him were created all that are in the heavens and on the earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or rulerships, principalities, authorities, all have been created through him and for him. Let's emphasize the end of that verse. All of this is for him. Now, it's his good pleasure to give to you. Just like the Father gave to the Son can give to you. Okay? But it's still for him. And the only reason it's for you is because he wants it to be for you. Okay? And no other reason. So let's stop thinking somehow this is about us. It's not about you. It's about him. Everything's about him. Now, he wants you to have, and he wants you to be the independent, amazingly individual, whatever that you are, right? All the flavors, differences that you bring to everything. But he needs you to trust him and obey in trust, trusting that that will bring all the good stuff that you desire, okay? Look, he's the manufacturer. He understands the intention of how this thing that he made is supposed to function. What's the ideal way of functioning? Just like if you went to the manufacturer of anything that you would buy, they would have clear understanding of what's the best way to treat, handle, work, whatever it is you bought, okay? Now, sometimes they put that all into an owner's manual. Ta-da, we got one, all right? Problem is, some of you don't read this and spend enough time in this. It's just like you wouldn't read an owner's manual of a thing you bought, okay? I probably have read 0 owner's manuals ever. I've tried to look things up in them sometimes. I haven't read an owner's manual. I've read this one, okay, but not for appliances or anything else that I bought, cars, anything that have owner's manuals. Let's continue. And he is above all, verse 17, he is before all, and in him all hold together. Okay, so now let's take the fullness of the definition of Yeshua and Messiah, the truth, the Torah, the life, the light, all that kind of stuff. So all of that holds everything together. The body is held together. The more we're like him, the more we apply what is he. What is he? He's the path, he's the way, the truth, the life, light, the law, the Torah, the word. All of that stuff, when applied properly, holds everything together, okay? So when you have a congregation, you know why it doesn't hold together? Well, because the teacher, but no, not because of me. You guys don't hold together because you're not allowing it to play out this way. You're not letting this hold everything together. You ever read some of these letters and hear some of the stuff that's happening in some of these congregations? Guy marrying his father's wife, whatever, doing this. And I mean, people doing all kinds of really bizarre things. They say things that aren't even heard of amongst the Gentiles. And you worry about your group? Okay? People are people. The world's got a lot of messed up people. A percentage of them are going to get their bubbles popped and come this way. Why are we not hoping that they'll get it all cleared up and figured out while they're here? You didn't pick them, he did. So stop judging his choice. Okay? You ready? Didn't put me here. You didn't select me to be here. You guys didn't vote and pick somebody to be up in front of the room. But he called you and put you here with me in front of the room. So there was a reason for that. Well, I don't like some of the things, but maybe that's what you're supposed to be dealing with. Maybe some of that is stuff I'm supposed to be dealing with when you bring it to my attention. We're all supposed to be getting something out of that whole interplay. But if it doesn't play out the way you think it should or whatever because you're filtering it through you, so what do? Leave? He sent you here. Did you finish learning what you were supposed to get here? Well, I'm just here for a season. What in the world does that mean anyway? Okay? Look, I guess we have to discuss on some level what this means. When the Israelites moved from camp to camp, what was the deciding factor to move? The cloud moved, right? The fire, the pillar moved, right? Okay. What would that look like, though, for a congregation? Would it be something to do with a personality, or would it be more like the teaching is no longer anointed with the same power that it was before? Something changed. Because I've seen congregations go into Christianity, into more something. They've left their straight and narrow and that kind of thing. Okay? So you could say, okay, maybe the cloud moved. All right? But I don't see Moses' personality changing a whole lot from beginning to end. And by the way, he was not loved by everybody. Oh, we all love him now. They didn't all love him then, though. Okay? How many times they say, well, who put you in charge? Well, do you take all this on yourself? I hear the same nonsense from you guys. Okay? I just started doing this and people wanted me to do it, and I just kept doing it, and more people wanted me to do it. All right? If none of you come, I'll go do something else. But that's between you and him. And whatever I'm doing, that's between me and him. Now, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't bring some stuff to my attention respectfully, because maybe I needed to hear something and make an adjustment, and I need to hear it from you. Okay? But if I don't handle it the way you want, should you leave? I don't know. I would think not. I think you need to work through it. I think you need to be patient. Let Abba keep working with me. Maybe I am wrong and I still didn't handle it right, but you're gonna let him handle me? Where in Scripture do you see anybody being handled by the people? Saul wasn't handled by the people. David, with all his issues, wasn't handled by the people. Okay, where are the people doing any of this stuff? Abba. David even said about Saul, he said, I didn't put him there, I can't take him out. Man was trying to kill him, and he still wouldn't kill him. He had an opportunity, several of them, to kill him. And he didn't, because he said, I didn't put him there. And you know what? He'd have stayed under Saul if Saul hadn't been trying to kill him. But he still respected that Saul was king even when he left. He didn't start a rebellion. He didn't start to raise his own army and kingdom and everything out of that. His son did that. Not Saul's, but David's. Okay? When he didn't like the way his father was ruling. But David never did that. The leadership is dealt with vertically. So the leadership is dealt with top down. So unless you're above the leader, what are you trying to do from underneath? Okay? Some of you got to realize that with your parents, if you're a child, with your spouse, if you're a woman, with your husband. Okay? You can't, ladies, you can't try to step over their heads and change your husbands. You got to pray your husband get under some leadership that somebody else can work with him. Okay? That's got to come top down. So a lot of you ladies are frustrated because, well, my husband, well, okay, and until he's willing to come under something and be corrected by some authority that he respects, there's nothing anybody can do. And he's certainly not going to respect you stepping over his head and stepping on his head and whatever you want to do, okay? It's got to be in the structure. So a lot of you still have that problem, okay? Some of you are like, well, we expect more from you because you're the rabbi. It doesn't change me from being a human male person, okay? With whatever problems that could lead to. I happen to have a gift and talent, okay, that's valuable to you in a certain way, all right? This gift and talent, by the way, will have no value to you if you need me to fix your car. Okay? It doesn't give me any insight as to what's wrong with your carburetor or your brakes or anything else in your car, your transmission, okay? Then you need somebody with that anointing and gifting. So why do you expect me to be, as a human being, anything beyond gifted at this part of it? Okay? I'm still working on my transformation just like the rest of you. Okay? Oh, but you guys all want to judge me and everything else. You can keep doing it. It's not hurting me. It's hurting you because it's part of your not growing, okay? Because some of you think that you're going to get me all upset. Ask Elder, I don't get bothered by any of this stuff, okay? It saddens me because I know it's hurting you guys and it's hampering your ability to get what I was giving me to give you. It gets in the way. So it blocks your ability to receive. Okay, I told you, emotions are a really thick, hard filter. You can't receive properly. Sometimes if it's thick enough, you can't receive at all. Okay, it is what it is. All right, so he's before all, verse 17, in all, and holds everything together. All right, let's see where else I want to go with this because we are already over time. All right, we're going to just read through this real quick and just finish this chapter. All right? says, he is the head of the body, the assembly, who is the beginning, the firstborn from the dead, that he might become the one who is first in all. Okay, so he's giving you structure here. So after telling you about the expectations, part of the expectation is that you are submitted to and recognize structure. Can we get that out of this? Okay. Because in him all completeness was well pleased to dwell, and through him to completely restore to favor all unto himself, whether on the earth or in the heavens, having made peace through the blood of his stake. So having made peace simply was that what we did in our sin, it created a gap between us and the Father. And so there was a reconciliation through the shedding of blood, okay? The idea of making peace. We're told in other places that we were enemies or at enmity with the Almighty. Why? Because we sinned. So he allows, through his shed blood, to bring peace to that enmity, but only if we did the other stuff. It only makes it possible. The Christianity just told you it just automatically happened. But it doesn't, okay? And you, now we're talking to you now, pay attention, who were once estranged and enemies in the mind by wicked works, but now he has completely restored to favor in the body of his flesh through the death to present you set apart and blameless and unreprovable before him. Now, let's stop there for a second. You were enemies. But wait. In what form did that take? It says you were enemies in the mind. Oh, we don't need to do personal development. Really? It says the problem's in your head, in your thinking, in your mind. You made choices. Your thoughts were wrong. Your beliefs were wrong. So your choices were wrong. You who were once estranged and enemies in the mind by wicked works. Well, the wicked works didn't make your mind wrong. Your mind was wrong, which is why you did the wicked works. Look, how many places do we have to go that says the same thing? Your heart, your mind were wrong. And this made you estranged, okay? I mean, we can go back and read as it says in chapter 2 of Ephesians. You were dead in trespasses and sins. You walked according to the course of the world, the way that the sons of disobedience walked. Your head was wrong. And then he says that when you were in that state, you were without Messiah, excluded from citizens of Israel, strangers of covenants, and without Elohim. He said to Ephesians the same thing he's telling the Colossians. Well, listen to how this plays out, though. He says, you were estranged, he said, but he's completely restored you to favor in the body of flesh through death to present you set apart, blameless, and unreprovable before him. Oh, that's great. Except there's one problem. The next word. If. That only happens if. See, Christianity didn't want to tell you that. If you, indeed you continue in the belief, founded and steadfast, and are not moved away from the expectation of the good news, which he just told you in the beginning of the chapter, some of that expectation. If that is the case, then you can believe that in his body, through death, he's going to present you set apart, blameless, and unreprovable, etc. Because you have to actually do the works to get you there. See, it's so hard to get our mindset wrapped around our part in this, okay? Because he says, if indeed you, he said, you who were once estranged, he's done all of this, if you indeed continue in belief, founded and steadfast, and are not moved away from the expectations, not expecting that the good news is going to happen, but the expectations that are expected of you in order to enjoy the good news that was shared with you. The good news which you heard, which was proclaimed to every creature under the heaven, of which I Shaul became a servant, who now rejoice in my sufferings for you and fill up in my flesh. Okay, we don't need to read the rest of it. That was really the main point right there, okay? Verse 23, all right? It says, you guys need to understand. Actually, you know what? There's more to it. I'll read you in starting in verse, like say, 27. To whom Elohim desired to make known what are the riches and esteem of the secret among the Gentiles, which is Messiah in you. So part of that good news is to share this stuff with the Gentiles. Because remember, the Jews started getting this stuff from the beginning. He said, whom we announce, warning every man, teaching every man in all wisdom in order to present every man perfect in Messiah Yeshua. So this is a big part of what he's saying. It's like, look, this went to the Jews first, but it's to you now. Not that it's not for them anymore, but it's for you now. But you have to understand, there's an expectancy. You expect the good news to play out, and the above expects you to enjoy the good news if you do certain things. There's an expectancy to you. So hopefully, I know we took a long time kind of getting there and wrapping through all this stuff, but this is all about the good news. You know what the good news is now. We covered that in the first 15 or so parts of this, okay? Now it's about what are you going to do so you get to actually participate in what the expectancy is for us in the future with the good news. And part of it is going to be, are you going to learn to love one another properly? Are you going to understand what that actually looks like? Because it's not a word, it's an action, okay? It's not just a feeling, okay? It's not a feeling. I mean, I could feel strong, positive feelings towards you, but if it's just feelings, then something can happen and I don't have those feelings anymore, okay? When you sin, does the Father stop loving you? No. But if we're in human beings, if somebody sins against you, you may not love them very much anymore if it's all about the feelings, right? And our feelings really are not properly situated. In other words, they're very important in our life. They cannot be the driver of these things, okay? So when two people meet each other and they're all in lust, and that doesn't mean they just want to have sex. I'm saying they just desire each other. But they'll say, oh, I love you. Well, do you really? Or is it more an emotion driving? Okay? Because then somebody says, well, if you love me, how could you do what you just did? Because you're looking at it through feelings. Stop looking at it through feelings. I did whatever I just did that messed you up so much because I'm a failed human being who has issues, and then that was my moment. It doesn't mean because I don't love you, okay? It means that I'm just a screwed up human being who had a bad moment. But of course, if it was only about feelings, then maybe I don't love you if love was just feelings, okay? Liking and not liking is a feeling, okay? So I can look at my child and say, I don't like you very much right now. I still love you. I love you very much. I'm not liking you right now. That's a feeling. I didn't like what you did. It made me feel a certain way. I don't like you right now, okay? Some of you can point to a food that you used to not like and now you like, or you used to like and now you don't like. It's just a preference and emotion, all right? Love should never change, right? Love doesn't die. Love is forever. Love is love. But it's not an emotion. Stop thinking of it as an emotion, okay? And that's where we have to really kind of get through. See, if you loved me, you wouldn't be, the ones who all left wouldn't left if they loved me. Because they would be here for what they're here for, and they would be patient and forgiving and tolerant of all the things that are imperfect about me, okay? That's, all of you listening, because I know you're still listening. And if you didn't listen last night, I invited all of you back, because if you're going to sit here and listen to me every week, why aren't you just here? Okay? It's because you're dealing with some emotional stuff, either because of me or the rest of the congregation or something. But if I'm the one you listen to every week, why aren't you just here, dealing with whatever your challenge is? Okay? Instead of hiding from it. Because if it's really about this in full, then why would you be watching? Well, I can't find anybody else who teaches like you. Well, isn't that a problem? That may be telling you something, okay? Yeah, but I don't like dealing with you. Well, maybe that's the whole point of being here, is to figure that out. Could that be? And you know what else? You're being really selfish, because maybe I need to learn something because you're here and I have a struggle with you. And you're not letting me work on me. Or anybody else in here that needs to work on them because you're not here. So maybe you're challenging. You think I'm challenging? Well, maybe you're challenging too. And we need that here too. Okay? You know, Well, I just can't deal with them. Okay, maybe that's what you need to deal with. Just throwing that out there. Where's the love? Does it cover all or not? Well, I've had people say this, Rabbi, I love you, but I just can't come anymore. Well, that doesn't actually match up. Those two phrases don't actually match up, do they? I love you, but. Now, if I love you, but says, but, like, for example, like you might have a parent that's just mean every time you talk. You say, look, I love you, but if you're going to keep being mean, I can't keep talking to you. I'm going to have to whatever. That's one thing, all right? But always give the opportunity and say, but if you could fix that, I'll talk to you all the time. So give the opportunity for fixing. But if you're going to go there, I'm just going to hang up the phone, or I'm just not going to come and visit or whatever, just because I'm not going to be treated that way. That's fine, all right? But almost nobody that's left has given me an opportunity to fix anything. Or elder, or anybody else, right? Right? Really, the elder, most people left, nobody gave us an opportunity to fix anything. He said no, all right? So why don't you want an opportunity to fix anything? Well, you won't listen. Maybe. I might be in a fleshly moment and not listen. I mean, that certainly could happen, right? But then you're not helping me grow either, are you? Plus, you might need to grow dealing with somebody who won't listen. It's a useful skill to kind of work on. Because I promise you in your life, you can interact with people that are not listening to you. Okay? Somebody just said, if you have kids, you know what it's all about. And by the way, I've heard a comedian once say that God gives us children so we can know how he feels. To bring something into the world that doesn't listen. Okay? I get that, all right? Although I'm very blessed to have at least one that listens very well, okay? Very blessed. All right, so let's go before the Father. Father, we come before you, and Father, we are really, really desiring and appreciative that you inspired Paul, right? Desiring to embrace the words you gave Paul to share with us so that we can learn what we need to learn so that we can know you and know what's well-pleasing in your sight so that we can do those things that will bring us to the experience and to enjoy the fruit of the good news. So, Father, we just want to thank you now, asking that you would inspire in us to do our part, to give us courage to deal with those challenging moments, to give us the fruit of the Ruach, the patience, the long-suffering, the kindness, gentleness, etc., that we would need to get through these challenging relationships that we have. Because clearly we struggle way more with relationship than we do with the mechanics. So, Father, we want to thank you that we can come to you, that we can ask all and seek all, in the name above all names, Yeshua our Messiah. Amen. Amen. Amen.